with you.
Yes, please.
And go ahead and introduce myself to our new members, which I am incredibly excited about. Is it John or Jonathan?
Just John.
John, okay, great. Before I start calling you, get used to calling you the wrong thing. My name is Matt McGrath. I'm the chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, I think for about a year or so, don't remember. But I've been on the committee for about 3 years, or right before COVID. We had like 2 meetings before COVID. It's strange how now I use that as, I have no semblance of time, but I just know that we met in person a couple of times before then we all disappeared into our houses. And so I've been here for a little bit of a while. My day job, I work for the United States Forest Service here in Flagstaff. And so I'm the district ranger, but do a lot of trails work. So wind up working with Martin and folks at the city on a lot of trail connections. So sometimes I'm always here as the chair of the committee, but sometimes I'll say, oh yeah, and also for the Forest Service, we're doing this too. So it's a little bit about me. I'll go ahead and Nancy, just give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Nancy Hagerman. I've lived in Flagstaff since October of 2000. I am a retired registered nurse and nursing instructor from Coconino Community College. Avid outdoors person, and I'm coming up on my 2nd year of retirement. My 1st year of retirement, I completed the 52 hike challenge. The over 50 outside women's group.
Nice.
And I got to know a lot of the trails around town.
Awesome. Where were you before you came here in 2020?
I was up in Page, Arizona. I was a flight nurse for Classic Lifeguard for 6 years. My husband worked for the National Park Service at Glen Canyon. And then he transferred to Grand Canyon and retired out of Grand Canyon.
Awesome. Great. Well, glad to have you. John?
All right, I'm John Day. Myself and my family, we just moved here in August. We were living up in Washington and Oregon for about the past 20 years or so. I'm also a Forest Service. Matt, we met briefly in Colville, probably 2015.
Oh, I just put it together.
Craig Newman. And
Yep,
whole group.
got it. And I know the last name now. Got it.
I work as the timber program manager on the Kaibab National Forest. I've always told people I work in timber and for the Forest Service just so I can hike in trails on awesome places and I get to move all over the place. Hiking and being outside is my favorite thing. I consider myself an aggressive pedestrian in town. You know, I don't know if I need to define that or not. I think you understand.
Yep.
And,
You're right, red lights.
Yeah. So yeah, glad to be here. Looking for just a way to get involved in the community, and this seemed like a good way to do it. So.
Awesome. Great. Glad to have you. And it's funny, and it all started to come together for me there. The Forest Service is taking over your committee here, Martin. Tahani.
Sorry, I was trying to turn my camera on. Hi, everyone. My name's Tahani. I moved to Flagstaff about 2.5 years ago with my husband. And yeah, I'm just overall a very large enthusiast of pedestrian and biking access, so on to get involved with the committee. So if you see someone on a really old silver Marin with an orange helmet or someone out walking a small healer that's very cute, it's probably me. So I'm sure I'll see everyone around town. I biked by Martin a few weeks ago.
Yep. And you went by too fast. I recognized you after that.
I was going on the downhill where you were going on the up, so it's an unfair advantage.
Great. Thanks, Tahani. Alexis.
Hello. My camera on.
Hi.
Well,
It
good.
is,
Hi.
yes.
I'm excited to join with you guys. I'm a student at NAU. I moved here from Portland. It's been over a year now, which is just kind of like settling in my brain. Like, wow, I'm legit. I've moved here. Yeah, I go to NAU. I'm studying business. I'm a sophomore. My goal after college is to get involved with the city, and so this has kind of taken my first step in that direction. And yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Glad to have you. Before I moved here in 2019, I was in Washington and I spent 1 year in Portland before I came down here.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, so we got a little Northwest collection.
I like it.
Awesome. And then Councilmember McCarthy, could you go ahead and tell our new folks
Okay, so you want a Northwest connection, right?
Yes.
I have friends in Portland that I stayed with there, and my brother and sister and daughter and grandkids all live in the Seattle area. So I've been in Flagstaff 20 years. I'm in my 21st year, raised in Tucson. Spent a lot of time in Phoenix. I've done a lot of bicycling. I rode my bicycle from Bright Angel Lodge to Nogales, Mexico once.
Wow.
That was a good ride. And like I mentioned before the meeting, I have 240 days below the rim of the Grand Canyon. I did my master's thesis up there. So, and then since I've been retired up here, not so much the last year or so, but before I got too busy and failed at retirement, I spent a lot of time walking from where I live in Boulder Point. I'd walk down to Macy's for breakfast and back, and then usually every Friday, I don't know if any of you know Tom Martin. You probably do, right?
I met him when he was walking with you.
That's right. We ran into when we were walking and you were bicycling.
Right.
He and I usually do a hike every Friday morning. We're going to do a hike tomorrow morning. So anyway, you know, we're wearing my boots.
Come in.
Anyway, enough said. I'm on city council in my 7th year. So interested in all kinds of transportation issues, from feet to airplanes to trains and et cetera. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything says hiking in Flagstaff more than Vask sundowners.
Right. These have been great shoes. You know, when I actually froze my feet shoveling snow off my roof years ago, so I have numb feet. And when I was walking neighborhoods to get elected, my feet were bothering me. So I went into the store and I thought, well, I'll buy some new boots. And the salesman says, look at this. There was a thumbtack in my shoe. And I took my sock off and there was a hole big enough I could put that, but my feet were numb, so I couldn't feel it. Anyway, so I bought these shoes when I was campaigning, and I thought if they're good enough to campaign in, they're good enough to wear. These have been great shoes.
Yep. I have an old pair of those myself. And when you put your foot up on the desk, I can see the tread worn down just right. So I can tell that you put a lot of miles
They're
on.
about 8 miles. They're about 8 years old. I mean, these have been great shoes.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Continuing with new business. Oh wait, did I skip? No. Preliminary business, public comment. Do we have any public comments or any requests for public comments?
We could, if I might suggest, go around to the other people who are on the call and have them.
Oh, and do some introductions of non-council members?
Yeah,
Absolutely, we can do that. Let's see, Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Bauman. I have a laptop with a dud camera, which I say at lots of meetings, so I can't turn my camera on. But I'm the city traffic engineer. I work with Martin, help support him with this pedestrian advisory committee and the bicycle advisory committee. And then my main responsibility is the transportation commission. Happy to be here. It looks like, Martin, you might be sharing the screen of the screen. I don't know how other people are looking at home, but it kind of looks like a double share. But thanks. That's better.
Okay. Let's see, Elaine.
Hi, I'm Elaine Mariel. I'm Active Transportation Program Coordinator at ADOT.
Hi, Elaine. Thanks for joining us.
Here.
Ryan.
Hi, everyone. My name is, excuse me, my name is Ryan Turley. I'm a lieutenant with the Flagstaff Police Department. And
Great.
my wife's from Clackamas, Oregon, to keep the North.
There you go. Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for joining us today. Did I get everybody on? Paul, sorry.
Yeah, my name is Paul Mood. I'm the city engineer, so I work with Jeff and Martin. And I've been with the city since November, so for about 5 months. And I walked my first Foots Trail earlier this week.
For hummus.
Great. Thanks very much, Paul. Now.
Can I go last?
Yes.
I'm Martin. I'm the multimodal transportation planner for the city. And I've been the liaison for both the pedestrian advisory committee and the bike advisory committee since about 2006. I've been in Flagstaff for 25 years and have worked for the city for that time. I've only been in this position since 2006. Before that, I was a city planner. Before that, I can't remember what my life, no, I was in Chicago before that, in Minneapolis. I grew up in Minneapolis. I think I've talked to a lot of you, you know, in the course of your application process and so on. So you might have heard this before, but since I do both liaison for both the PAC and the BAC, I think there's interesting differences between the two. Primarily that people who bicycle tend to think of themselves like they identify as bicyclists. So as a result, people who consider themselves to be advocates for bicycling or bicycle advocates are a dime a dozen. Pedestrians, on the other hand, it's interesting because all of us at some point during the day are pedestrians, even if it's, you know, very short walks, but people very seldomly think of themselves as pedestrian advocates or would self-identify as pedestrians in the same way that bicyclists do. As a result, it can be at times more challenging to find people to be on the pedestrian committee, but when we do find them, they almost are always very committed to walking, very interested, very intelligent about the issues, good looking, better looking than average than most people in the city, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I do really enjoy both committees, and I enjoy kind of the differences and the similarities between them. And there's a lot of overlap as well. I mean, we can't, you know, really separate bicycle advocacy from pedestrian advocacy. And there's a lot of overlap, but I do enjoy the discussions and look forward to many more.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that, the value, I believe the Transportation Commission places on both the voice of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Anytime any issue, whether it's small or contentious, and the Transportation Commission sees some contentious issues, they always say, did it go through the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Bicycle Advisory Committee? It's just an expectation that things will come through these groups before it goes up to the Transportation Commission. And then now that Paul introduced himself as the city engineer, as the chair of the PAC and also the chair of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, we're invited to participate in the interviews, the hiring process for the city engineer, which I thought was really proud to do that. And it really shows the value that the city places on the work that we do. And so like Martin said, we've been running with about 4 folks. If one person was absent, we didn't have a quorum for the last few months. But like you said, once we get folks, and I like the term aggressive pedestrian, that was awesome. I think I've probably said that about myself in the past too.
It's gotten me in trouble.
I don't doubt it. Yeah, no, I've thought about that. I was like, I probably need to tone it down from time to time. But if you're stopping the crosswalk and block me, then I'm going to get aggressive about it. So just thank you very much all for joining us. Very much appreciate it. All right, now on to public comment. Martin, did you get any requests for public comment?
None. I don't know that anybody in the meeting is considered
Nope, and
public.
we've got everybody on there. So approval of minutes. Did folks, you sent the minutes out in the email. Did folks have a chance to review the minutes? I think Tahani and I were probably the only ones that were here for that last meeting. But Tahani, do you have a chance to review the minutes?
Yeah, I'll approve the minutes.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve? Tahani?
Yes, sorry, my microphone went back off.
That's okay. So a motion has been made. I know neither of you are here, but would you mind a second to approve the minutes? I promise you that they are accurate, reflect what we discussed. Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes of our previous meeting, please say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved.
I didn't get to vote. If you wonder why I didn't vote.
Okay, and then on to old business, Martin, safe sidewalks discussion.
Yeah, also, Chair, if you want to revisit public comment, I just noticed Adam Shimoni
Oh.
in the meeting.
Yes, okay. Are there former council member Shimoni? But we're just doing public comment and just wanted to offer it up to you if you had any public comments for us.
Gosh, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Martin. Right on cue, right? I actually didn't have public comment, but I guess I do now. So thank you for that. I just want to welcome the PAC and staff. Thank you for being here and being part of this committee. I might as well give a quick update. We had a nice budget retreat last Friday that you'll probably hear about. All about capital projects, and a lot of those projects include subrate, bike, and ped infrastructure that should be easy to maintain, and that's really good news. There's a lot on your agenda today that I'm looking to comment to, so I'll keep this comment brief, but I'll just say that council fully supported the staff looking into funding for the bike pilot elevation of those bike lanes on Butler to the height of the sidewalk, and creating larger multi-use paths on both sides of Butler. And although we didn't know, the council didn't know the cost at the time, and I know staff and Martin are still working on that right now. And so the next budget retreat is on the 27th. So council will have a chance to weigh in at that point. But the council is very clearly interested in both protected intersections at Butler and Beaver and Butler and San Fran, along with the elevation of the bike pilot prior to the removal of the barriers. And same with the BAC, the Bicycle Advisory Committee, made it really clear that their recommendation was to not remove the barriers until there was funding. But I know that's on your agenda, so I'll leave it there for now. But yeah, we have council support and direction, but they still need to weigh in on the final budgetary decision at the end of this month in April. So please keep that on your radars, and please feel free to engage with council, let them know where you are at individually and as a committee. They need to hear from you all. Thank you, and looking forward to your meeting.
Great, thanks, Adam. I will just mention to you that the Beaver Butler bike lane discussion that was scheduled for tonight is actually going to be bumped to our May meeting.
Good to know. Thank you.
But still a lot of other meaty stuff on there for us. So thank you. So now, Martin, old business, safe sidewalks discussion.
Give me just a moment here to share.
We have a lot of folks on Teams this week.
Yeah. For those in the room, do you prefer it, which screen do you prefer it to be on? The one behind me or the one over here?
Doesn't matter to me.
I like the one there, but I can also spin the other way. This one's a little bit closer, I think. So
Okay.
maybe by a matter of inches, but for some reason it seems better.
Go back to the beginning. So I think we began talking about this at our December meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So some of this is going to be a little bit of the same information, but I thought it was useful to go through anyway, just to see kind of where we are. I think we have a little bit more organized, and then we have, of course, 3 new members we can get caught up on what this process is. And this was a discussion that was initiated by the city's Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living, which was formerly known as the Commission on the Commission on Disability Awareness. So they changed their name a few years ago, and they really wanted to begin a conversation on how we treat sidewalks, basically, especially for people with who have challenges with mobility, how we maintain them, how we do winter maintenance of snow removal and cinders and that sort of thing, and just sort of explore what the issues are and see if there are some suggestions for better ways to do things, or more efficient ways to help clear sidewalks and make sure that they're available to everybody for the duration of the year. So we've offered at the staff level to kind of help guide them through that discussion and provide information for them as we can, and come up with recommendations at the end. So what we'll present today is a summary of what they've talked about so far, and the Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living has had some good discussions about some of these issues. Pedestrian Committee is kind of, we'll do the same thing with them. We'll bring this item back at subsequent meetings and talk about specific issues and try to work through this. I don't really have a time frame for how long this might take. We're kind of working on this at the staff level as we can, so we may not have, you know, all the resources that we can devote to it to finish it quickly. You will see as we go through it that there are a number of places where we could use some help filling in some information, and we'll cover those when we get to that. But if anybody's willing to, you know, do some research or look things up, or if you hear things, see articles or whatever to share them with us would help provide some of that supporting information. So here's what we came up with for a general outline, beginning with the introduction that kind of sets the stage. 2 is a description of what is the nature of the problems that we're having. 3 explores existing policies and codes that the city has in place now. 4 is similar, but it talks about practices of the city. 5 is where we summarize ideas from other places and what our best practices. And then 6, we kind of sum it all up with recommendations for how we might move forward. So I'll go through each one of those kind of in a little bit more detail. So here's the scope. We're talking really about anything, any kind of facility where people walk or bike. And for challenges, we have it broken into 4 categories: blockages, winter conditions, maintenance, and closures and detours. And the next couple, the intended goals of this process or this project would be to understand problems clearly, communicate the consequences, because not maintaining things and not clearing snow does have consequences, especially for people who have challenges with mobility. Engage a wide range of partners, compile all the existing information, practices, policies, codes, et cetera, for the city, finds other options or other ways to do things, and develop a set of strategies and recommendations, and finally consider how it would be implemented. So don't really just stop at those recommendations, but go to the next step, which is how do we actually do it? And you'll notice there's a lot of overlap between the outline that I gave and our intended goals. Partners, we haven't really developed a list, but this is who would be included potentially. Anybody who's affected or should have a voice with this issue, people who are responsible or can help address some of the issues. What are groups or individuals that can support the effort or have a similar interest or similar goals? So I think we don't have to do it tonight, but I think at a subsequent meeting, we'll talk about like who might fit into that and how we want to reach the community as part of this process. So that really is this next slide. Community outreach and engagement. You can see it's completely blank for us to fill in at a later date. So no preconceived notions here. So the next section we'll go rather quickly through this instead of going through it in detail, but the CIAL spent some amount of time like talking about what their problems are, what consequences they have. And I think that was in kind of one of the previous slides, but talking about what the problems are and then talking about what impact they have on people, I think is pretty compelling. Like we want to be able to tell the story of why this is important, how this matters to the city and our citizens. So again, we've got it divided into those 4 categories. Blockages are anything from parked vehicles to overgrown vegetation, recycling, trash bins. Winter conditions are all the things that happen from snow and the follow-up of cinders. Maintenance and conditions are pretty well documented for some of our facilities, and we know what those issues look like. And then the last one is closures and detours. So inevitably, streets, foot trails, bike lanes, sidewalks are closed for construction, but how we manage that becomes the important thing. For example, if construction is taking place near the sidewalk or the bike lane or the foot trail, but it doesn't affect it directly, can we leave it open during construction, or does it have to be closed? And then in cases where it does have to be closed, can we limit the duration? So we keep those things as open as possible. And in the cases where they do have to be closed, are we providing either alternative facilities for people to use or a way around via a detour? Existing policies and codes, I've got it divided here into what we have in plans and policies, and then what we have in codes and regulations. So here are where the plans and policies are contained. I looked for the regional plan to see what it said about maintenance and other issues, and it actually did not say a whole lot. And the regional plan that is current for the city was adopted in 2014, and we've just started a process to update that plan. It'll take a couple of years, but I think there's an opportunity here to start talking about maintenance and some of these issues and include them at the policy level as a way to begin addressing them. And then the other ones, I'll show you what's in the ATMP, but it is a little bit more specific about some of these questions. That goes for the coordinated mobility plan as well. And then the carbon neutrality plan doesn't have much in it, but it talks about getting people out of cars and into walking and biking. So they're kind of adjacent policies and goals. So we don't have to go through these in details, but it is addressed in the ATMP under the set of goals for maintenance operation. You can see 2.1 through 2.5 really address those 4 issues pretty specifically. And then further, we have strategies listed. And again, this is really small to read, but we don't have to go through them individually, but you can see like under 2.2, for example, which is clear ice and snow. There are a couple of suggestions on how we might move forward with that. So part of what we'll do is fill in the details for those suggestions and kind of flesh those out. The coordinated mobility plan is a document that is produced in cooperation between Mountain Line and Metro Plan, which is the regional transportation planning agency. And it is intended, it is kind of a federal mandate to get funding. And it is intended to address mobility concerns for people who are disabled or elderly. So they update it every few years. They have talked about some of the issues with snow removal and maintenance and some of these same issues. And so they have a number of goals in that document. And really what that means is there's just support in different quarters for this process moving forward. They could also be one of our partners in helping us develop the information in this plan and the strategies and recommendations at the end. So the next couple slides, I think you were provided with this in your agenda. So you're welcome to click on any of the links, but these are what the city has for existing codes. Flagstaff City Code has 4 different titles that include specific provisions, 8, 9, 10, and 13. And this just gives you kind of a sampling of what those are. So 8.01 addresses sidewalks. The next one is snow and ice removal. There's one on sidewalk cafes and other things that may or may not block sidewalks. Trees and shrubberies, and you get the idea. This is the one that addresses traffic. And I think that's generally it for specific codes. So part of what we may recommend is if we identify a place where a code is lacking or may need some tweaking or amendment, that might be one of our strategies for moving forward.
Do you think there's any code that needs to be tweaked, or do you think it's just existing code needs to be enforced? Just curious.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I'm wondering, like, if there's anything that we've missed in developing the code.
I'm guessing that like the code is not the place where we're going to solve a lot of these problems or make a lot of ground. But there may be something that's missing or something that we can make it kind of help work better. I think it's going to be our practices, how we fund things, how we do things where we could probably make the most difference. All right, on to chapter 4, which talks about our current practices, and we've got it divided into a few areas: information, outreach and reporting, enforcement, processes. So a process might be how we review applications for street closures, for example, due to construction, and how what we consider when we look at those, how we issue the permit, whether we require people to provide detours or alternate routes, things like that. And then operations is how the city does snow plowing or cinder removal or any of those things. So there are a handful of resources available, and I've got them summarized over a couple of slides here. One thing that CIAL found when they were kind of reviewing this information is there's really nothing, it's kind of in bits and pieces all over the city's website. It's not in one place anymore. And some of these things are not intuitive to find. So one of their early suggestions was, can we kind of organize this better so somebody could have, it could even be like one page where you could go through and go, okay, if the issue is snow left on a sidewalk, call this number or look at this resource. If it's vegetation, if it's a parked car, it would provide that information. Same with reporting resources. So we've got a couple of phone numbers, sidewalk complaints, snow plowing, parking violations. And then a couple of resources on the city's website, beginning with this. These are all under the citizen tracker, which is a place where people can enter concerns or requests. And the city does, I think, a pretty good job of responding and being responsive to those things. And they're divided into different topics. So E is a sidewalk violation. I is the foots. K includes sidewalk repair and snow operations. But again, I think there's a question about how accessible like how easy is it for people to find these if they want to report something? And can we make that better? I've never really looked into it, but I don't know if you access the city's website on your phone, and yeah, there you go. Matt's going to try it for us. And you want to enter a concern, if you can like take a picture or like pin your location or something like that, that would make it easier to provide that information, easier for the city to address it on the other end.
I'd love to comment on that too with the website portal itself used like from the computer or on the phone. I used it recently to like get a phone number for snow plowing information. And I would like to say it was a little tricky to find the number, I didn't know exactly what part of the website to go into or what specifically where I can find that information. So yeah.
So you had a similar experience that CIAL found when they looked through it.
The last city I lived in, which is Vancouver, just across the river from Portland, there was just an app for the city that you could put on your phone that would have these types of things all listed. And you could take a picture and it would take your location and submit it. And it was an app developer that develops this for all kinds of different cities around the country. So
That's cool.
I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's Vancouver, Washington.
Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. No, I love the idea of just it's the same way as like taking a survey, there's like the Google survey. You can just bring up a portal and just take the picture, add a comment, add the title of what's the main issue. And I think that, yeah, that'd be a great way to get public information on that.
This app was sort of a one-stop citizen shop.
Yeah.
If you lived in the city, you could pretty much find everything in this app.
Yeah, I went to the website on my phone and it's like just a standard website form, but you can attach a photo.
Oh, okay.
Like a photo that you can take right there.
Yeah. So probably not as user-friendly as what John was talking about, but still pretty good. And I did not know that was there. I thought just there was the phone number to bother people in person.
So it's one thing to have it available. It's another thing to make people aware that it's available and to kind of encourage people to use it. So 5 is best practices from other communities. And again, here we have no information yet. We'll start to fill that in. And if anybody wants to help with that research. Vancouver, yeah, we have one already. Also, I included just a kind of a smattering of articles that I found about how other communities are considering snow removal from sidewalks. And typically, Flagstaff is not unique in that we require the adjoining property owner to clear their sidewalks. And, in one sense, it kind of relieves the city of that burden. In another sense, we have to do some extensive enforcement in order to get it kind of, to a point where it's usable. And the trouble always with linear facilities like sidewalks is if you can have 9 people that comply and 1 person that doesn't, and that may significantly limit the value of that sidewalk if one part of it is blocked.
Do we have any statistics from this past winter on how much enforcement occurred with sidewalk clearing?
Yeah.
My impression was it was 0, but.
Yeah.
I can answer that maybe because I asked the city manager the exact same thing. And they replied to me that there is enforcement, and they gave me a number of how many citations they've written. It was significant.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess to agree with what Martin said, in my neighborhood, I walk down the street and the first 15, it's all cleared. And then you get the one where they haven't done nothing, So walk real slowly through that section. But somebody in a wheelchair, impossible.
Yeah, quite so. So it's been a couple of years, but in the past, we have had Reggie Eccleston, who's the city's code compliance officer, who does most of the work and has a couple of people working for him that do the enforcement. He's come and told us what their process is and then given us the stats on, for any given winter. So we could have him do that again at some point. I mean, I think
Could we do that? I think that'd be something we'd all be interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because from my perspective, the code was there
Mm-hmm.
to keep the sidewalks clean, but the enforcement, I mean, even downtown here, there was.
Yeah.
Didn't look like a lot of enforcement occurring.
I also wanted to add, I think Flagstaff is unique in itself too, that for, I don't know what the percentage is, but for a good chunk, a lot of second homes here or vacation rentals. And so it's about, who's going to be there to clear that sidewalk. My boyfriend, he had to walk to work, during that snowstorm, and it would be like the 15 feet of clear sidewalk. And then, for the next 15, no plowing. And I guess I'm also curious about how those citations are served for those people who aren't in the city at the time, but say will be in the summer.
So the city's looking at new regulations for short-term rentals. We had to include this in that discussion.
Yeah.
Isn't the county doing that too?
Yeah, because the legislature just passed some laws that has given us limited ability to control short-term rentals. The legislature is very pro short-term rentals and doesn't like cities to do anything about it, but they did give in a little bit in the last session.
They like local control. As long as you're willing to do it, they won't.
Yeah, local means Arizona over US.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean municipal. It does not mean Phoenix, Tucson, or Flagstaff, that's for sure.
It's called the proverbial double standard.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I could identify all the Airbnbs in my neighborhood was they would just never be shoveled.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's something I'll keep in mind when this comes before
Yeah, that'd be
council.
great. Thank you.
So I think if you look through those articles, they kind of talk about, the limits of enforcement on keeping sidewalks clear. And so these cities are considering having the city do some of the work. And of course, that addresses the issue for the most part, but it's also very expensive for the city to do that. This is not.
The number of miles of sidewalk is beyond belief.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have to hire a whole new department.
Yeah.
And the problem is you only need them for a few months out of the year.
Yeah, so to me, like one potential way of thinking about it is, do we think about kind of the high priority areas like downtown or along Milton or other busy routes, and maybe that's where we focus our efforts.
Or on major
Versus-
bus lines, maybe.
Maybe bus
Or
lines.
the disabled and elderly.
And school routes.
Yeah.
And thinking further into the future, honestly, going back to that app idea, John, I can see us as pedestrians walking along a street, all of a sudden we come across a snow barrier. We can easily just report that in the app, find the location. It's very easy to identify. And it kind of makes us as the public doing the work or making it easier, to resolve that.
Yeah.
Maybe we could get volunteers to clear off the sidewalk in front of people's house with the stipulation that they throw all the snow on the person's driveway.
Well, yeah, I wonder, is there a way to incentivize, adjacent homeowners that, could go and clear
Yeah.
some of these areas?
Well, I know on my block,
Business owners.
usually if someone's out there with a snow blower, they do the whole block.
Yeah,
We have somebody like that too.
yeah. Well, we have people that will do all the sidewalks in front of people that actually live there, but they won't touch the Airbnbs. and stuff like that.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yep, I understand that feeling.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think the city sustainability office was looking at, not sure what they called it, like snow angels or something, where, you would be like a rally volunteers to help people who,
Yeah.
can't.
Can't
do the
physically
snow
cannot do
themselves.
it.
Yeah, which is a consideration. And I think when Reggie talks to us, that's one thing he'll talk about is, it's one thing to issue tickets or citations or warnings or whatever, but if the person is in that condition, then it seems a little heavy-handed on the
yeah,
part
no,
of
I
the city.
agree. I mean, there's a balance because like if somebody's parked on the sidewalk, I can't move their car for them, but I can shovel somebody's driveway down the road for me. So I think that we
Not
do.
not without the right piece of equipment again.
No, I can walk right over it. John and I will just step right over it in our aggressive pedestrian nature, but, so I mean, I think there is certainly that need to be neighborly to an extent and help
Yeah.
those folks. So.
Yeah, so, we start to collect best practices, and snow removal is certainly one, and I think there's a lot of insight that we get from other places. We probably should just make it a rule or a general policy not to talk about snow removal in the middle of winter, and like maybe.
I'll say.
I imagine we would think of it differently.
Yeah, I mean, I need to say the city did an
June.
amazing, I think, a great job this year with, I don't know if it was number 3 or number 4 snowfall.
Yeah.
I commute I walk on the foots to work, and even on the snowiest of days by 9:30, the foots was plowed probably the second time where I am over on the east side of town by the mall. And so city is doing a great job as usual.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I've seen from other snowy cities is they have a really detailed snow operations plan, and the city has one as well, and we'll pull that in as part of the information that we collect. But I think it was Calgary is the one that I saw that the snow operations plan was really, really detailed, and that information was provided almost in real time to the public. And so, like, you could look up, okay, here's my street. This street falls into category 3 or whatever. Like after a major event, I can expect my street to be cleared within 4 days.
Yep.
And then you could break that down to sidewalks and footpaths and things like that. So people could see what the priorities for different trails or bike lanes or sidewalks or whatever it is, or parks, and know when it would be cleared. And even if it's like, would take a couple of days to get through a heavy storm, at least knowing that the city is getting to it and that it's part of the plan, I think makes people feel better about it versus not knowing if, the trail hasn't been cleared. We don't know when it's going to be cleared. And so, they had it attached to their snowplows had GPS information, so you could like track it in real time. But providing that level of information, I think, would go a long way, even if we don't change necessarily what we do, but just, give people a level of comfort that it's happening.
I've seen other cities with that same type of real-time map where you can look and see where the plow is at, when it expects to get to your road.
So the final is our recommendations and strategies, and I just listed a handful of things that kind of how we might organize it. In the middle of, this was a tough winter, of course. In the middle of it, it just seemed like some of these problems were almost unsolvable. But I think if we kind of with the resources we have and all the different groups and people that are involved, I'm confident we can come up with some good strategies. And we've only barely reached out to Public Works, who does a lot of this work, and they really need to be kind of, at the table and let us know what they do and what might help and what works and what they've tried. Because they really do their best in pretty challenging situations. So I think that was it for that item. We can move on unless there's any follow-up questions or comments.
Adam.
Thank you. I do have a public comment if now's a good time.
It is a great time. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Great presentation, great discussion. Appreciate all the comments that were made. Couple notes I jotted down. I definitely think that looking at higher priority routes rather than just sidewalks at large citywide is a good approach to prioritize. Because we, with the ideas of induced demand, and we get what we work towards, we get what we plan for and what we maintain for. If we don't maintain sidewalks and bike lanes, we're forcing people to drive, if that's what we're maintaining for. But, with the council policy shifts that they made, I think last year, putting the pedestrian first, cyclist second, public transit third, and then car last, for engineering standards and designs of future projects, I'm really hoping that transfers over into maintenance as well. And those values, shift over there as well, because it is about equity, accessibility, and giving people options. And if we are able to keep people out of their cars, then that saves the city a lot of money in terms of road projects and maintenance. So I do struggle with the volunteer approach. I like the idea of like maybe having a special team at the city that responds to, reports or, trouble areas. I love the app idea. I've been to a number of conferences where the app was brought up for, like for elected officials across the nation. And Councilmember McCarthy, if you wanted to run it with that and elevate that to the budget discussion, I think that's awesome. I don't know what the price tag is, I forget, but it isn't cheap, but it's totally worth it in my opinion. But it's going to take a lot of political will to actually get that in place. For now, what I've been encouraging people to do is to email council with photos of problem areas, and that will reach staff. And just in addition, we should be talking about cinders as well on that list of items. Cinders right now are a huge issue all across town for pedestrians and cyclists, and aren't being addressed, right? And so, and then lastly, Ottawa, Canada is another good town to look at. They have a great plan in place for snow maintenance. They actually have 45 miles of bike lanes, like the separated lanes on Butler, and they maintain them with the highest sense of priority, equally to their higher routes for cars. So there's a way to do this. It's about policy and priority and where we put our money. But yeah, just wanted to add that to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, Martin, moving on to new business. Fiscal year 24 capital improvements.
Okay, so it's around this time of year, every year, the city council and staff adopt a new budget. Part of the budget is the capital improvements program. Capital improvements are essentially any facility, public works project, et cetera, that the city builds. So as part of the process, we go through an internal staff review, and then it's presented to council and eventually sometime before June 30th, I guess.
We had a CIP meeting last Friday, I guess it was.
Yes, right. So part of that was the council had a retreat on Friday, and the entire capital budget was presented to them over the course of, was it 8 hours?
All day. Like 8 to 5, something like that.
Yeah. So I've included the presentation. Let me go back to the beginning. That was provided to council on transportation. And we could just kind of take a quick look at it. So you know what to expect in terms of capital improvements. When we get to the ped bike part, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but for the new members, know that this group and the BAC have worked for a long time on identifying projects and prioritizing them. So what's in the capital budget really reflects the work that you've done over the last couple of years. And of course, when next year rolls around, we'll do the same thing again. Once we did it the first couple of times, we kind of got it under our belt. We have that information, but it's always worthwhile to take a look at what's coming up and what our priorities and what our next projects want to be as part of this process.
Quick question. The new tax, as it's called up there, Did it have a specific amount for bike and ped, or was it just sort of general words like will include bike and ped?
The old tax?
The new tax, the one is the 2018,
Yes.
it's a specific amount for various categories.
Yeah, and I don't think that was, like established by ordinance, but I think all the public information that was provided,
Pamphlets and all.
yeah,
Okay.
had a specific amount. It was $29 million over.
Okay, thank you.
Over 20 years. Okay, so what Councilmember McCarthy refers to is that we have had two transportation taxes that have lasted 20 years. The first one was adopted in 2000 and expired in 2020. And in 2018, we took it back to the voters and they approved an extension of it to 2040. So that's the old tax and the new tax. We refer to it as a transportation tax. The new tax has a cutout for ped and bike projects of $29 million, as we just discussed. And so we'll take a look at some of the projects. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this. I'm going to skip right ahead to the project. So these are all transportation projects that are funded with that same tax that was approved in 2018. First is Lone Tree Overpass. And I'll go quickly, but please just jump in if you have any questions about these particular projects. So that's a new section of roadway from Butler to 66 that goes over the tracks. It was actually approved as part of a separate proposition, a separate tax. You can see the budget is 109 million and construction, we're working on design right now. Construction is anticipated between 2023 and 2026. Butler Fourth is expanding the intersection at Butler and Fourth, widening Butler from essentially Sonawa Heights to Little America, and then building probably a roundabout at Little America in front where, I don't know if you ever drive through there, but every time I go through, there's a truck turning in some direction, or usually several trucks turning. So the roundabout will help sort of manage that a little bit better. You can see a sample of what the road cross-section will look like. And probably the most significant thing is that we're moving the bike lanes off the street and attaching them to the sidewalk. So it's more comfortable for cyclists. We discussed this over the last couple of years between PAC and BAC and kind of settled on this configuration. One advantage is that we have an 11-foot piece of concrete that's fairly, the city knows how to maintain that. We can plow that. We have the equipment to do that. It's possible to do. It is an additional maintenance obligation on the part of the city. So, make no mistake, but at least we have the equipment and are able to do that. And you can see this one we just started design on it and construction is planned for 2024 and 2025. Lockett Cedar Roundabout is Lockett Cedar at the north end of 4th, kind of in the midst of the library and those schools. This is funded through a federal highway safety improvement program grant for $2 million. Construction is anticipated for next summer.
Is that still the schedule?
Yes. Paul or Jeff, you want to confirm?
Yes. You should see utility relocations this summer and actual construction next summer.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Sure.
Yep. John Wesley Powell Extension from by the airport all the way over to Butler and 4th. This is a new roadway. We are working with some of the large property owners that you see on the map. They're paying for 60% of it. The city's paying for 40% of it. And we're doing the planning and design now. Construction is next year and the year after for that.
The road ends now at that city parcel, right? Or right, that Juniper Point, is that where it ends?
Yeah, 4th Street ends at Butler.
Yeah, and then Powell coming from the west.
Yeah, right, and then it ends by the airport,
Yeah.
like just like a block or two past,
Yeah.
Pulliam, yeah. So those two will connect through that area. And that will open up a lot of this area, this private land for development. Beulah University, part of what it does is align the two universities. So instead of having them come into Milton like this and this, there will be one facility. And there'll be a roundabout in the middle. That's under construction. So yeah, it's April 23 to 2025. Part of it you can see at Milton is a pedestrian underpass on kind of what would be underneath that north leg of Milton. Yeah. So we anticipate that a lot of students live in that Woodlands Village area to the west of Milton, and this will give them a way to get across to campus. Milton is perennially an issue in that it's hard to get across if you're walking or biking. It's one thing to walk or bike along it. It's a whole new issue to try to get across it. So it forms kind of a barrier of our community.
For sure.
When you think about where NAU is, more students live, that barrier is pretty significant. So this is a significant piece of infrastructure to help us kind of overcome that. Schweitzer Canyon Trail. Get you oriented here. This is the roundabout at Schweitzer Canyon and Turquoise. This is Fry's. And this is the end of Terrace. So this is all kind of above, on that hillside above Schweitzer Canyon and Route 66. So we've actually had it designed for a couple of years, and we have the funding in place. And I think, what's the construction? 2023 to 2024. So I kind of like this one. Is it like we got it as close to downtown as we could. The end of Terrace is not far. It's kind of an obscure street, but I think it'll become more popular for walking and biking once this trail is in. But once you're there, this route will take you, and we don't see the existing trail, but it goes all the way up to Buffalo Park.
Yep.
And you cross 2 streets in that process. So like getting all that way, it is a real help. Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but that Lone Tree overpass comes in right at the bottom of this, and that will extend a foot trail along Lone Tree from that point all the way down to like Sawmill. And so we look at those 2 trails that on a map are this far apart and think, how do we connect those 2? And it's going to take some significant acquisition of property. And then there's a great difference that's pretty significant between the 2, but.
How do people get across Route 66 there?
It'll have to be it'll be a signalized crossing, so just an at grade probably.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not ideal, but
Yeah, that trail is great.
yeah, it would be a great connection. You can think about like a grade separated crossing, but like one side of the road, the trail is up here, and the other side of the road, the trail is down here. So you could have a tunnel that goes, but then it would end up here, or a bridge that goes over here, but it would end up there. And
So
it's hard to.
there'll be a pedestrian path over the railroad tracks though, and
Yes, the Lone Tree will provide that. Yep.
Oh, that'd be great.
now people just walk across the track.
Yes, people find a way. Yeah.
Some of them die. Not many.
Yeah. This is the other part of the Lone Tree project that widens it from O'Leary all the way down to Pine Knoll. And includes our bikeways and foots as well.
Is there a school at the south end of that there? Is that where the elementary school is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that elementary school moving somewhere? Do we know that? I thought I heard that.
I'll double check with Jeff, but I think that when it gets widened, when Lone Tree gets widened, that it necessitates moving that school. That's still the case, Jeff?
I believe most design alternatives involve that school site. And my understanding is that school is on a list for FUSD to be moved, replaced But this is still a little ways out for us to have serious discussions with them, but that's what we've known for a number of years. So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sure.
And then the last one is a few years out, but it's the intersection at Country Club in Oakmont on the east side of town. You can see that design is scheduled for 2025 and construction in 26.
Is that just the intersection?
Just the intersection at this point. Yeah.
Okay, because there's no sidewalk north of there.
Yeah,
Right.
That's on the list. But
that's
not-
on our radar.
It
for
is,
sure.
but not in the
Yeah.
next few years though. But yeah, because that's a tough spot to get around on your feet,
It's a tough spot.
especially now when the whole Rio is flooded. You can't just walk across there.
I think that the entirety of the Country Club neighborhood is a bit tough for walking. There aren't sidewalks.
Yeah.
But they're generally, low density residential streets. However, when you get out to Country Club, like I think having ped and bike facilities along that section of Country Club would get you to the bus stops at Solier, would get you to the Foots Trail at 66, and would provide kind of a way for people to funnel down to in the neighborhood to kind of get out of the neighborhood for that last little bit, which wouldn't be comfortable without sidewalks and bike lanes and Foots Trails and things. Okay, so then we did a presentation on the bike and ped portion. So we mentioned that it's over the next 21 years, it's $29 million. In the first 5 years, we have $12.8 million. We also have $5.5 million in a federal grant, and that it's 5.5 in federal money and 1.4 in city match. So the total is 6.9, but that 1.4 comes out of our 12.8. Did you follow?
There's gonna be a quiz on that later, and I'm gonna fail.
Yeah. So the upshot is we have 12.8 plus $5.5 million in the first 5 years for projects. And the next few slides, well, here we talked about the process that we use to identify and prioritize projects that this committee and the bike committee went through. We did have a lot of public engagement, and the process that we used is spelled out in more detail on the ATMP, as are the priority projects. A couple of general things. We pay for some staff salaries with some of that money. We have a little bit of money set aside for pre-design, so we can do concept level plans to get information, cost estimates, some basic information about projects, and then use that to apply for grants or to move the project forward. That link is live, and it goes to our online map that shows all of the different types of facilities and what their priority and what their time frame is, if they're planned the next 5 years, within the next 20 years, or beyond 20 years. And here's a little bit more about the pre-design. We've been working on 2 projects currently that former council member Shimoni referenced. One was the protected intersections at Beaver and San Francisco along Butler. And then the second one, which we haven't really kicked off in earnest, but it would be taking the pilot program that exists along Butler now and rebuilding the edge of the street basically to raise the bike lane above street level and make it the same level as sidewalk. And then we go into different types of facilities. So here are Foots Trails. And you can see we divided it into, the capital plan is 5 years long. It addresses 5 years of projects. So the first year is our budget request for next year. And then years 2, 3, 4, and 5 are out years, what we plan to build in those years. So it's kind of our way of planning for projects. And then theoretically, everything that we have funded in FY24, we build next year, we get the money for it and build, and then everything that was in the out years, we just roll up one. It doesn't happen quite that neatly, but that's the idea. And it allows us to give the public an idea of when projects are coming, and it allows us to kind of plan for what we have coming up. And then if, for example, if we need an acquisition of right-of-way or easements, and we know a project is coming up in a couple of years, we can start working on that ahead of time. So do you want me to talk about any of the individual projects, or are you familiar enough with these, or
I am, but let's see if anybody else is.
maybe look to the new members?
Yeah.
It's the Route 66 trail.
That is a connection in front of the Chamber of Commerce from Beaver to the new undercrossing that would be built as part of the Rio project, just right. Is that the right direction? Like right out there? Yeah. So we're gonna have this trail, a trail that goes under 66 in the railroad tracks, kind of north-south. And then we want the 66 trail to come and tee into that, to make that connection.
Okay.
So when
I
that,
mentioned to the committee that there's going to be two places where you can get under the railroad track as a pedestrian. One right by City Hall and then one out in La Plaza Vieja.
yeah,
So those will both be nice additions.
yep. And significant projects, because it's actually the railroad tracks make it difficult to get into downtown, walking or biking. There's really, the only places you can do it are Milton, Beaver, or San Francisco. And this will give two places where you can avoid cars altogether. Sidewalks, we have a couple of them planned. We have more sidewalks planned with first mile, last mile funding, which comes up in a couple of slides. We divide crossings into enhanced crossings and grade separated crossings. So enhanced crossings are at grade, so pedestrians are crossing with traffic, but we provide whatever facilities are needed to make that crossing safer and more comfortable. And a lot of them end up being beacon crossings, which we have at Humphreys and Butler, Route 66 and Blackbird Roost, a couple on 4th Street and Sunnyside, one at, I'm not going to get them all, West Street and Dortha, a couple on Lone Tree, the one on Lone Tree at Brandon Circle, one on Lone Tree at the Community College, another one on 4th Street in front of Gore. And there's probably a couple more, but
I think you did pretty good right there.
Jeff could do that better than I can. But yeah, those are the sorts of crossings that we're thinking about.
Okay.
And then grade separations are, bridges or tunnels for pedestrians. Those are really expensive, but they can have a really big impact as well on walking and biking. And then bikeways, and here a lot of what we're planning is striping, pavement marking, signing improvements to try to make a more complete, robust bikeway system and try to pull the whole thing together into a coordinated network. And for sidewalks, crossings, and bikeways, all of those are funded as well by first mile, last mile. So whatever we don't fund with the transportation tax kind of gets picked up in first mile, last mile. So here are the sidewalks for first mile, last mile. The list represents not only our priorities, but also working with Mountain Line to figure out like where they see a need for sidewalks by their stops. Yeah. Same with crossings. So for example, you can see Solier could have up to 5 crossings that correspond to the 5 bus stops that are along there. Likely those wouldn't be beacon crossings, but maybe an island and markings, something to call attention to where, make the crossing more visible and help slow traffic down. So pedestrians have a good chance of a more comfortable way of getting across. Some of the other ones, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. Some of them may be beacon crossings. Some of them may just be those islands. The one that's significant, I think, on this list is on Fort Valley Road. And probably the most important one is the one at Forest. So that's an ADOT roadway, but both the city and the ADOT have recognized for a number of years that there needs to be some improvements for crossing at that particular intersection.
That's really, really risky.
We've got more.
It's really
emails about
tough.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little kids will stand there for a long time and cars are just, everybody's on their phones, trying to find the
Yeah.
way to the
Yeah.
ski hill or the Grand Canyon and, yeah.
Hopefully we can improve on that. And then there's a couple other places where we have bus stops and as well as, neighborhood on one side and commercial uses on the other, where it's tough to cross, without an island or some help in getting across. And then there's a handful of bikeways, again, with the idea of creating kind of a robust, complete network of bikeways. And most of it is limited to the existing street and redoing the striping, adding markings, like for example, green markings and signing as well. And that's the last of the capital presentation.
Great. Any other discussion or comments about the capital improvement program? Adam, public comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Martin, again for the presentation. Of course, I've got something to add, committee members. Hopefully this is helpful to you all. Just a couple points I'd like to share from my thoughts. A lot of this is already in the past, so it's not something we can pick up at this point, but it's good information to keep in mind as you look forward. The Lone Tree Overpass project that Martin spoke about tapped into about, I think, $17 million of 419 funds. So yes, Bike Ped got 29 million of the pot. I think the rest, I think the total was 154 million. So the difference is towards other projects that include Bike Ped needs, of course. And I'm grateful for that inclusion, but it seems like when other projects are going over or need additional funds, 419 is typically tapped into. So Lone Tree, I believe, tapped into 17 million of that funding. And, with Martin's comments and the comments made about the Schweitzer Canyon connection, I do have concerns, and I'm so glad Elaine is here with us from ADOT. That intersection is not a protected intersection. It's a subtle difference that would go a long way to protecting bike and pedestrians crossing that intersection, especially given that there's that Schweitzer Canyon connection. Why not build a protected intersection there is my question. So maybe Elaine can, think about that and let us know her thoughts or help communicate that to the higher ups that might be able to actually do something about that. But I see a lot of value in a protected intersection there. We talk about underpass and overpass, but those are extremely costly, as Martin said, and the maintenance is challenging. And to me, it's a failure at grade when you do an alternative like that. So if we can just do an at grade option that keeps people safe and alive and keeps kids comfortable and more vulnerable populations comfortable, we don't need to go over or under, which is not necessarily good for pedestrians either way. Anyways, Butler 4th Street is, I know Martin said it's likely going to be a 2-lane roundabout. I want the committee to think about that. Whenever you have a 2-lane roundabout, is that good for pedestrians? Think about that. 2 lanes of oncoming traffic without anything stopping them other than their goodwill and their ability to see you amongst all the distractions that they have. Are they going to stop? I don't know. Maybe, right? And then you have 2 lanes coming in the other direction. So that discussion for that intersection is not done yet. And I'm really pushing for a protected intersection there, which really prioritizes ped and bike safety and comfort. And so I invite the committee to speak up and to push back on 2-lane roundabouts around town, because ultimately they might slow traffic down and prevent collisions between cars, but they're not necessarily better for bike ped. And they also move cars more efficiently. So I like to check us on that topic of 2-lane roundabouts in general. When we talk about Butler widening and additional maintenance for bike ped, when we add lanes for vehicle travel, we add maintenance for vehicles as well. So don't feel bad about forcing our maintenance on bike ped committee members. We are adding maintenance for cars all the time, and there's no second guessing that ever, right? Couple more points. The Beulah University roundabout, 2 lanes, it was funded. Looking forward to that coming in just to see how students navigate that, because I don't think it's going to be good. But that also tapped into 419 funding and $13 million of 419 funding, just so you know. And there's no at-grade crossing, there's only the underpass. And a concern I had was that female student at night walking home, is she going to go under a 120-foot, tunnel at night? And she's likely going to play Frogger crossing Milton, right? So that's a huge concern of mine. And, just giving you more to think about. But that's a done deal, that we can't go back on that. But looking forward, just so you know, this is the past that we've encountered. So in closing, the projects that Martin spoke to about bike ped for Butler elevation and those intersections, those are not part of the CIP list. And I'm coming to the realization now more so, and our team still needs to look into this, but I think for us to receive grant funding for that, if we're not going to fund it with 419 funds, those projects need to be on the CIP list. And if they're not, we're not going to be able to access grant funding for it. So that's something for the committee to think about. If we want to see that move forward, we got to act on that and move that forward. And then lastly, with those additional crossings and better supported crossings that Martin just spoke about, I'd like for the committee to elevate the priority and expectation on pedestrian crossing. We shouldn't just be aiming for people to barely get across safely. We should be prioritizing their safety and their comfort and making it easy for kids and elderly and people in wheelchairs to cross, and not say, good luck, hope you make it across, right? I'm just kind of tired of that mentality, and I'd love for us to really shift that. Those are my comments. Thank you. And I know that was a lot.
Martin, grant updates.
Hey,
And you're gonna talk a little bit more about first mile, last mile here.
yeah, we can look at the maps. I
Yeah.
don't need to say too much more about it. Just a couple of quick updates on grants that we've gotten. One small one is Flagstaff Trails Initiative was awarded $10,000 from city CVB.
That's great.
They're going to use that to install 2 new trailhead signs along the foot system. And the trailhead signs are these fairly large metal ones that have a map of the foot system on it. So they're going to install 2 new structures. One is going to be at the start of the Seago Lily Trail, which is 6th and Isabel, right by the BMX park. Seems like a good place for a system map. And the second one is going to be in the parking spaces along Brannan Circle, just east of Lone Tree, kind of where the Sinclair Wash Trail goes through. I don't know why I'm making you imagine where these things are. I've got a map. Here's A011, if you can see that, is the one at the start of the Seago Lily Trail.
Yep.
And then A013 is the one at Brannan Circle. This gray line being the Sinclair Wash Trail.
Yeah.
At the same time, there might be a little bit of money left over, or the city will fund updating the maps that are in the current one. So we have, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 existing trailhead signs that have maps that are a couple years old now, actually about 5 years old. So they need to be updated. So the grant will pay for part of that, and then that new maps for the new structures as well. So actually, I think they're beginning work on those trailhead structures this week, so they could go up pretty quickly. We're a little bit further behind on the maps, but we'll get caught up. First mile, last mile, we talked about a little bit of it. We have 6.9 million total, including 5.5 million in federal money. It was actually Mountain Line that applied for and got the grant, but they're working closely with the city, and they're giving us a lot of deference in terms of what projects we want, but we've been working with them to make sure that it's our priorities for ped bike, but also help support their transit as well. And just to go back, first mile, last mile refers to the concept of, if you're a bus rider, you need to find a way to get from that first mile, it's usually a lot less than a mile, but from your house to the bus. And then the last mile is when you get off the bus to get from there to school or your office or where you work or whatever it is. So first mile, last mile is meant to address how we get to the bus and how we get people to the bus and how we get people from the bus at the other end. We have selected a design firm. They've begun working on a scope and fee. We've got it divided into 5, 15, and 100% plans for design. So 5% is kind of an initial shakeout to make sure that the project is feasible and meets the grant requirements. 15% is a little bit more concept where we develop the cost estimate. Then 100% is full design, and that from 100% design we go into construction. we're working, we've got a, like I said, we've got a designer picked out. We're working on the scope and fee. Within the next couple of days or weeks, they'll start working on the 5% designs. I don't think that we're going to be in a position to do any construction in the next season, so 2023. So look forward to like 2024 for some of the projects to roll out. And then you can, this is actually the map that shows the list that we saw in the last presentation. So red is the sidewalks, blue are crossings. And then bikeways is a bit more of a mess, but you can see the different. Bikeways, we get kind of more miles for the dollar because we're doing mainly striping and pavement markings, which is way less expensive than building things. But probably a significant one is the purple, where we're intending to swap the existing bike lanes up for buffered bike lanes. So a buffered bike lane just puts a 1.5 or 2 feet of additional space in between where the bicyclist rides and where traffic is. It's not a perfect solution. I mean, you're still, you know, there's only a bit of extra space between you and a car, but I think it will help with comfort, and it's a thing we can do now for not a ton of money, and hopefully make some goodwill and progress.
What's the time frame for these that we're looking at here?
So we'll probably work through the final design this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so next summer, I think we'll try to roll some of these out. I think with the bikeways, hopefully we can do them, like it's one contract, it can all be done at once, versus like building sidewalks, or crossings that, you know, is more construction heavy, that may take a little bit longer and more contract work to roll out. And then the last one is also a federal grant for Safe Streets for All. $200,000 awarded to MetroPlan. Again, they're our regional transportation planning agency. And it's for preparation of a plan. And that makes us eligible for construction funds after that. And you can look under where I've got 37 awarded projects. You can look at some of the communities and projects that were awarded in the last round. And it's really easy to imagine how we might do something very similar in Flagstaff. So for example, Butler, I think a good grant project would be redoing all of Butler to change the bike lanes to elevated, do the protected intersections. I think we would write it as kind of a complete streets grant. So we would look at what can we do for pedestrian crossings and along that. Can we improve the sidewalks? Just everything that we could do for peds and bikes along that corridor that needs help now. And these grants are, I don't have it listed here, but they're for several million dollars typically. Like I remember the one from Missoula, I think was like $12 million to do that kind of work, which is what we would need to redo Butler in that fashion, but here's money available for it. So we'll keep you kind of apprised of our progress with both that planning effort on the part of MetroPlan and when we're ready to apply for implementation grants. And that's that.
Yeah.
A little bit of federal money. Hopefully we can parlay this $200,000 into millions.
Yeah. It's a good start. Is that the last grant?
That's the last grant one.
Okay. Great. Then we can move on to concluding general business and reports. Already talked a lot of capital projects.
We have, so I'll go through the other ones. We don't need to cover that one again. Part of the budget process is the city's operation. So in transportation, we have asked for 2 new positions. The council is going to consider that part of the budget at a retreat in late April. So, and part of it would be, one of those positions at least would be more or less for active transportation. So helping implement some of the capital projects, working on some of the plans, like moving our whole program.
So you're thinking one more Martin, and then what would the other one be?
Mini Martin.
Transportation engineer.
Okay, so that they could be streets or whatever.
Right, right.
But one would be kind of focused on the stuff that you're focused on, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and part of it is like we have all these capital projects and it's a strain on the city's resources to our ability to deliver all of them. So if a position can help do some of the advanced work, we may be more efficient in delivering those projects, like actually building things.
So does it sound like Greg Clifton's supportive of that and his budget team? It's in the list.
So far, yep.
Yeah, good, good. So far,
We got
the
Paul.
damn council might do something.
Hands up. Paul?
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up on what Martin was saying. We presented our requests to our internal budget team. We have a budget team that looks at all the requests from every division. And with the budget, the budget team is recommending approval of the transportation planner that we requested, but they are not recommending approval of the transportation engineer associate, but it's one of their high priority if funding becomes available. I think overall in the organization, they said that, and don't quote me on this, 27 new positions are recommended for approval, and I think 9 or 12 of those come out of the general fund. So that's what council will be seeing at the end of April.
So the multimodal, the one that you described as the multimodal, Martin, that's the one that is not recommended?
No, it is recommended.
That one is? Okay.
Yeah, and we had an open transportation planner position
Oh, okay.
for approximately 20 months, and we've got that person starting in early May. So we are getting Martin some immediate help.
Okay.
And then once, assuming this new position request gets approved with the budget, then we'll immediately advertise for that position as well.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate
Yep.
that clarification.
Okay, other reports. C is Sawmill Road crosswalks, and I think this came up at one of our previous meetings. Since the student project was built on the east side of Sawmill, a lot of pedestrians are crossing there. So the city did a count, and there are more than enough pedestrians crossing there to warrant striping crosswalks. So we're looking at that on Kensington and a little bit further up. I've got a map.
Okay. I'm just gonna look it up. Kensington.
Yeah, there you go. Pops right up. So all of this is the student housing.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
The bank credit union is up here in the corner. Kensington is a public street, and you can see kind of that there are sidewalks on both sides and curb ramps. And the student development built curb ramps on this side, so we're kind of set up to provide crosswalks there. There's also a crossing point here, kind of over to Whole Foods. And there's not a sidewalk in this part of the parking lot, but there is one here that crosses over to where Whole Foods is. We're missing curb ramps here and here, but we may be able to, like if funding could be identified, we could add one here. And they do exist on the other side of Sawmill as part of that student project. So I just wanted to, that since that came up at a previous meeting, I wanted to kind of follow up since we had, done that work and identified that potential project. Moving on, D is similar. A couple months ago, we talked about renaming the tunnel along the Sheep Crossing Foots Trail. This is south of Ponderosa Trails under I-17 over to Fort Tuthill. And a group of citizens had petitioned city council to rename that for Cosmic Ray. And that was done in, was that
About a month ago.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was thinking it was December.
Yeah.
but
Right,
My
I
sense of
think we
timing is,
incorporated the words cosmic ray, but also incorporated the word sheep crossing. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but
that's right, yeah.
so that was kind of a compromise that I think Deb Harris suggested, and everybody goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because the tunnel, that underpass was built for sheep to get
Right.
across, and that's part of its history as well.
Right.
So we didn't want to lose
So
that
they're
part of
both
it.
important. So I think it was a win-win. That was That happens sometimes. We try to make it happen.
Yes, it was a good solution, and we're, another update, the citizen group that initially proposed the name applied for beautification and action grant through the city's Beautification Public Arts Commission, and they were awarded that last week, or recommended awards for last week.
Yeah, I say I'm on the Beautification and Public Art Commission, and so they requested about $3,500 for that. And so one of the, what do you call it? The wall that goes into the tunnel, Martin? There's a technical.
The wing wall?
Yes, the wing wall on one on each side. One will be painted with a bicycle and a potential bicyclist. Cosmic Ray's widow is very adamant that she did not want a portrait of Cosmic Ray on the wall. So more abstract, just bicyclist, and then kind of getting at that compromise then on the other wing wall, a herd of sheep, more realistic than some of the initial. They had one of the initial proposals was like rainbow sheep, and it was, which it looked super cool. But in keeping with the community was pretty vocal that they felt the sheep history or the Basque shepherd history was pretty important. So yeah, no, that one sailed through. There wasn't even any discussion on that one. They just presented that one, and the BPAC voted unanimously for that one because it's a great project.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
And I think the staff people for BPAC have put in, I think in the budget, some money for interpretive materials for the sheep herding history.
Yep.
As well. And I think the Foot's budget is offered to be part of that as well. So I don't know when that might be a little bit slower than
I think it will be.
Yeah, it'll take us a little bit more time to get that together.
These mini grants are awarded pretty quick, immediately, where that takes a little more time.
Elks Lodge Trail and the Schultz White Trailhead. We continue to work with property owners. It's going fairly slow on formalizing the Elk Lodge Trail. This is a social trail or user-created trail that goes between, do you know where this is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's the trail that never really existed, that never goes away.
They're cutting fence to
Yeah,
get through it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny little
Yeah.
thing on my end of town.
Yeah. So the story is that the city's building is replacing that water line that kind of follows along the same alignment, more or less. And so we've used that opportunity to secure trail easements along with the water line easement for the whole thing to try to make it formal. It's a bit of a slog, not gonna lie. But we make a little progress here and there. We actually, I think since the last time, we actually obtained our first easement for that area.
Great.
Oh, my gosh, that's
So we
great.
have, it's in the middle of nowhere. Like if we put a trail there, it would connect to and from nothing, but you have to start someplace, right? You can't do it all at once. The Schultz Y is the series of detention basins that were built on city property where Eldon Lookout Road and Schultz Pass Road come together. And I just saw some images of those three basins all completely full.
And it's flooding
And it's flooding, yeah.
beyond.
Yeah, how about Milton under the railroad bridge? Have you driven that?
Yeah. Go back.
No,
It's about
no.
that thick.
Yep.
Is it?
Yeah, there's supposed to be pumps there. What happened to the pumps?
I don't know if they're overwhelmed or if they, have burned out or what. It's interesting though, the last couple of mornings, coming in, east on 66, the road's been wet. I go, why is the
That's
road
why.
wet? That's why, yes, it's tracking water,
Yeah,
like all the way to San Francisco.
Yeah.
oh, yeah. Yeah, I've noticed it. Well, and the other day I was going down Butler and it was flooding across, between Beaver and San Francisco. It was flooding,
Oh, yeah.
above the curbs.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
houses have been flooded, actually, a couple.
We drove out north over the weekend and there's still a ton of snow in the forest when you get a little bit higher up. So this is not ending soon.
No.
It's still
There's more to melt.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when that levee gave way and there was just more water up and, to fill up the new lower Lake Mary and lower Lake Mary.
Lower, like.
There was just more room for water. Paul,
Yeah, so just want to follow up again on what Martin was saying. I had the exact same question today to a public works employee about the Milton underpass, and I was told that the pumps are being overwhelmed. They're monitoring it, and then I also was asking about, my first question was about all the wet roads, and he said, yeah, those pumps are overwhelmed, and it's people tracking the water down the streets.
Thanks, Paul.
So the other thing about the second part of that is the Schultz White Trailhead, is when the city built those series of 3 basins, they also built like a little informal parking area to become, formal trailhead. And so we've been working with, Matt's fine employees at the Forest Service to figure out how to get people through those basins and into the Forest Service to make kind of a continuous trail connection. And we have an alignment picked out. I think we have a kind of a plan to move forward with whatever basic improvements need to be made to make that trail functional. And I think the Forest Service is going to put up some carcinite markers to kind of mark the path to direct people. And the city's going to follow up with something a little bit more permanent later this spring, so that when the basins were dry, people were sort of picking a variety of ways to get through them and across, and we've kind of found a way for them to go. And of course, they can't now and won't be able to for a while, but I think the path that we picked is still high and dry.
I believe so.
Yeah, yeah. So once things dry out and people start using it, we want to have some direction for them on the appropriate way to go. And the last one is Buffalo Park accessibility. This is a project that we looked at probably a year ago. This is one that was initiated by the Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living. We got a grant from the state to make improvements to the trail, the Nate Avery Loop Trail around Buffalo Park. It's been resurfaced with a material that is better for wheelchair users. We're putting in accessible parking at the entrance, so there is no accessible parking now. A couple of, I think 6 of the exercise stations have been replaced with universal design stations. And then we're adding some concrete to give better access around where that entrance building is. So I think a lot of that, the stations are there, the trail's been resurfaced. I think the Parks is hiring a contractor to do the concrete work for the accessible parking spaces, and I think that will happen this spring.
So did they ever put signs up telling people what the rules are on e-bikes?
Not yet, but we're gonna add some signs as part of this grant.
The council decided to allow certain types of e-bikes on all the foot trails except the Arizona Trail and that loop trail in Buffalo Park. I didn't agree with it, but I voted for it. Well, the reason I did this was a compromise, because everyone on council wanted e-bikes on every trail. And I talked them into those 2 trails, no e-bikes. And since they agreed to that, then I agreed to the compromise, which to me, I feel comfortable with that. Although a lot of my friends gave me a lot of crap about it. Oh, well. Hey, that's how it goes.
Was it the first time since you've been on council?
That I've been getting a lot of crap?
Yeah.
No.
It won't be the last either, I'm sure.
When I first got on council, I thought, do the right thing. Half the people are gonna hate you and half the people are gonna love you. What I figured out is do the right thing, because everybody's gonna hate you.
So part of the plan is to have, put in some directional signs to show people where the accessible loop, part of the accessible, like part of the Nate Avery Trail makes a steep dive down and it comes back up. But there's a bypass to that doesn't do that. And so we want to direct people to be able to use it if they don't want to do that.
Good idea.
Steep dive, yeah. And the Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living is really excited about this project. Again, it was really them that thought of it and pushed it forward. And so we want to make sure that when things are done, that we kind of celebrate this, acknowledge it appropriately with the community sometime in the late spring, early summer.
So you could do something for council, have people come and
Yeah, that would, yeah.
That'd be great.
And then, you know, the agencies that give us grants, like in this case, Arizona State Parks, really appreciate when we acknowledge that this is where the funding came from and this is how we're going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the reasons that the commission was excited about the project is Buffalo Park is kind of our crown jewel of, you know, park space. It's well used and the idea that we make that accessible to more of the community is a strong statement about, you know, kind of where our values lie and how we want to be inclusive.
Exactly.
And I am officially out of things to say.
All right, great. So going to concluding announcements and looking at agenda items for the next meeting. So Martin will definitely have the Beaver and Butler discussion,
Yes,
and because that'll still be before it goes to the council.
yes.
Okay. Are you going to be doing that, or are we going to have a visitor? Do you know?
We'll have a visitor.
Okay, great. Any other announcements that you have for us, Martin?
I have nothing.
All right. And let's see, we got two hands up. Elaine?
Yes, thank you. So Martin, how about if I follow up with you on the suggestion Adam was making about that particular intersection? Okay,
That sounds good. I'd be happy to.
all right, thanks.
Great, thanks, Elaine. Adam?
Thank you, Chair. Just want to thank everyone for a good conversation today and also for allowing me to share my passionate thoughts. Elaine, thank you for that last comment you made. If there's also a key person I should speak with, I'm happy to reach out directly myself, just as a member of the public. But just wanted to let folks know that, you know, Bike Month is coming up starting May. And I am a board member with the Flagstaff Biking Organization. And so I invite you all to take part in our efforts. There's events happening all month long. You can learn about it at flagstaffbiking.org. And there's an event calendar up there and something for everyone. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And be part of the bike challenge where you track your rides and win prizes. So join the efforts. Take it to the streets and be safe, of course. But thank you all for a good meeting today and looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time today, Adam. We're always happy to have you. So we appreciate it and appreciate your comments. And so, yeah, so I will thank Tahani for sticking with us. Thank Alexis and John and Nancy for joining us. And at that, we will adjourn. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So is that the